Howdy, and welcome back. I'm Steven, and this is FWP Reviews. The previous month is March, and it is a month that I saw many movies. There were many good, many bad, and many mediocre movies in this month. Without further ado, my thoughts on the good, the bad, and the mediocre of March 2021. This month starts off with possibly the worst documentary I have ever seen, A Glitch in the Matrix. White men in desperate need of a therapist dissociate once and think they've unlocked the key to the universe. The creepy Google Map graphics, the VTuber-esque avatars, the Minecraft analogies, and the extreme obsession with Elon Musk all combine for something that is extremely creepy to watch. Simulation theory is an interesting idea, and this documentary does absolutely nothing to the benefit of that idea. This is a solid yet forgettable documentary about one of the all-time bigs. The play-by-play is ultimately unnecessary, but some of the unseen footage is really cool. A relatively entertaining look at all the bad and sexist things about high school with none of the nuance of top art movies about the same thing. The ensemble, the music, and the narrative all make for a relatively entertaining movie with a strong message. Moxie left a little to be desired and was a little bit heavy-handed at times. Chaos Walking had a long walk to theaters. Sorry. That walk to theaters may have been long, but what came out was ultimately just a mediocre movie at best. In this movie, it feels like there's so much that happens, but also so little that happens, if you know what I mean. The performances by Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley are solid for what they are. This movie isn't all bad, but it just feels like an unnecessary movie in the already large sea of mediocre book adaptations. Coming to America is a solid and classic movie. Coming to America is neither of those things. It was bold of this movie to make a joke about bad, unnecessary sequels when in fact this movie is one of the worst perpetrators of that trait. None of the jokes hit like the original and the narrative just wasn't up to snuff. Boss Level's pros stop at the entertainment factor. There's nothing to stop me from constantly rolling my eyes at every bad twist and turn this narrative makes. Frank Grillo does what he needs to do, but unfortunately for him, this movie just doesn't do it for me in a world where we've got an infinite number of time loop movies. Raya and the Last Dragon is an early contender for Best Animated Movie of 2021. The narrative is somewhat generic, but the representation, beautiful animation, and amazing action make this movie something special. The passion on display in this movie is great. There's a certain darkness in this movie that works really well for the movie without making it too dark. When the movie needs to hit the emotional buttons, it hits them hard. I really enjoyed this movie and I highly recommend checking it out. Maybe not for $30 though. This month has been filled with a lot of bad and mediocre documentaries. Persona is no different. This documentary does have some interesting information about the history of personality tests, but that's it. It really just ended up feeling like a word vomit because of its poorly paced and relatively short runtime. Starcrane had a lot to give, but unfortunately it just doesn't put any of the pieces together correctly. Crazy about her, and I'm not crazy about this movie. But why would he try to get locked up in a facility with a girl that he had sex with once? Man, this is a weird narrative decision and you know it. This movie really loses all of my interest after the relatively entertaining and stylistic opening. The last hour of this movie is a total drag and it took all of my willpower to push through. Night of the Kings pays homage in a muddled narrative about the origins of storytelling. I did enjoy this movie at times. There was an interesting and unique atmosphere for the most part in this movie. It just lost me a little bit when we were just jumping around different points in the narrative and it was being really vague. It just didn't quite hit right. While some parts of Cherry hit home, most of them did not. Cherry is a long and arduous watch filled with every filter, camera lens, and genre you can think of. This movie leans on Tom Holland's performance a lot. And while Tom Holland did his best, his good performance can only carry this movie so far. Come True is a movie I highly recommend watching at noon and not right before bed. This is a fascinating horror movie about what lies within our dreams, and it was really entertaining. This movie honestly had me nearly as scared as I am during the likes of Hereditary and Midsommar. The twist towards the end didn't really land, but that doesn't reduce this movie to anything less than great. The Father has a lot of hype around it, and I can see why. It's very confusing intentionally, and it's really well done. Anthony Hopkins' killer performance helps bring this terrifying and confusing movie home. Long Weekend is a flat and unenjoyable rom-com that only has a few solid moments in it. The twist of the movie is the only real redeeming factor of this movie, and it's hard to talk about it without ruining the movie. All I can say about this movie is it's subpar, but it does have some redeeming qualities, so check it out if you must. Zack Snyder's Justice League, the superhero movie to beat all superhero movies. Zack Snyder's Justice League actually is the first 10 out of 10 movie of the year. I loved it. It's definitely an improvement on the originals, so I highly recommend checking it out. I'm not going to give any more thoughts on it because I've already made a video about it, so if you need more thoughts, check the video out and just watch the movie. Finally, a good fucking documentary. The Last Blockbuster is the first good documentary of the month. I'm sorry, The Last Blockbuster is about the Last Blockbuster. While this documentary doesn't have some higher societal value, it is an effective trip down memory lane. It chronicles the downfall of Blockbuster, but it also really effectively shows the living legacy of this company. A personal favorite memory of mine at Blockbuster was finding out that there were 5 or 6 different Air Bud movies about all the different sports. This was a life-changing experience, and I haven't seen them in a while, but I am fairly sure that they would hold up perfectly to today. Yes Day is a movie that when I see, I go, if these people can get their movie made, one day, surely I will get a movie made. It's as stupid as it sounds when the premise is just that the parents have to say yes for a day. Some crazy childhood antics combined with some surprisingly serious themes ultimately make for, you guessed it, a bad movie. The only redeeming factor about this movie is that the side characters that pop up throughout for 30 seconds at a time, they're pretty funny. Surprisingly though. Stray is a documentary about several stray dogs inside of one of the largest stray dog capitals of the world. This is an interesting documentary, but its viewing value isn't very high because it's kind of hard to watch. What the actual fuck was this? Anybody? The Courier is another historical movie that puts all of its cards in the historical story. It just makes a solid, albeit not risky narrative. The performances are okay and it's relatively enjoyable, it could have been so much more. Bad Trip. Again, I say, what the actual fuck was this? Jokes aside, road trip prank movies need to die out immediately. The man getting penetrated by a gorilla is not only the not funniest thing I've ever seen, it's also the worst thing I've ever had to see. Finally, Nobody is a good John Wick style movie. I'm not a huge fan of John Wick, but I did find this movie to be a harmless and nonsensical fun time. The Home Alone trap style ending is something we've seen a million times, and it didn't work extremely well for this movie, but the rest of the movie was good and had some intense and brutal action. Bob Odenkirk is great and really helps sell this movie. A Week Away is a movie I didn't know was about a church camp until I watched it, and it's not great. It does some interesting things on the camp front that help to remind me of the camp experience, and I did enjoy parts of that. It's just a little bit weird, and not all of the jokes land. It also just didn't do a lot to keep the interest of the viewer. The campfire song went hard, though. Okay, with CSpircy, I think we're back on track with the documentaries. Bit of a rough patch there in the beginning half this month, but we're back on track, okay? This dark look at the underbelly of the fishing world went about 200 times crazier than I expected it to. Massive corporate corruption and slavery were not topics I expected to be talking about coming out of this movie. It doesn't feel out of place in the documentary though. It feels like a natural escalation. It doesn't feel like it's just going for shock value. It feels like we're slowly and steadily building up to all of these naturally like what the fuck things about the fishing world. This documentary also does something that I always want this kind of documentary to do. It gives me tangible and real solutions to practice. There were a few stylistic decisions that took me out of it, but as a whole, it was pretty solid. The final movie I saw in March was quite a heavy hitter, none other than Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong is as nonsensical and crazy as any MonsterVerse movie yet. Yet, it is one of the best. Godzilla 2014 remains unmatched, but this is the best ungrounded movie they've made. This movie goes full beans on several of the aspects, and I adore it for that. The humans suck, but the fights, visuals, and action are everything we needed. I hope to see the universe continued in this trajectory. With that, we're at the end of another summary video. This month, I saw 25 new movies. That's a ton even for me. I'm excited to continue my path to watching 250 new movies by the end of the year. I hope you guys enjoyed the next few videos I have planned as I continue to go hard into April on my reviews and my videos. Until this time next month when we go over the April releases, follow my Instagram at FWPReviews100 for daily written reviews about the newest movies. With that, this is FWP Reviews signing off. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.